If you're somebody that's looking to improve your overall productivity, then in this video, I'm going to be showing you exactly what steps I've taken to maximize my overall productivity, not just in production, but just my overall life. I thoroughly believe now, after all the research I've done and trial and error on myself, is that productivity really just comes to removing all these distractions that we have, all the unhealthy distractions like I've talked about before, but also these triggers that we might have that lead to these bad habits that we consistently go towards. And these bad habits are really what we keep leaning on when we are going through tough times, or that we are trying to distract ourselves, or that we're just feeling like procrastinating in general. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we become less distracted in order to be more productive? So first of all, we have to remove those triggers and finding out what they actually are. And the best way to do that is next time that you feel like, let's say playing video games or watching Netflix, or going out drinking with your friends. Sure, the social side is great and everything like that, but if you're leaning heavily on it for fulfillment, you have to start asking yourself, when you start thinking about those things, like, what is that feeling you're trying to get away from? It's the same with when you're doom scrolling. If you just stop and pause for a moment and just ask yourself, what am I trying to run away from here? Like, what is this feeling I'm trying to escape by distracting myself? Because more often than not, that's why a lot of us end up going through these doom scrolling phases where we hate doing it, but we can't help ourselves doing it because it just feels nice to be distracted, so we don't have to think about the stresses that we currently have going on in our lives. So when you start having those triggers happening, just have to slowly identify what's actually making me do this thing. Like, what am I running away from? What is this problem that I have? Once you've identified that problem, you have to also start to find ways to make it a lot harder for you to lean towards these unhealthy habits. So the first thing is reminders, like notifications. So if you go on your phone and the first thing you see are all those red little notifications of how many messages or tags that you've got on whatever social media platforms, or even if it's just notifications in general on your settings on your phone and everything like that, all these things are instantly triggering you to start looking at your phone applications and clicking on them. You're already in that mode as soon as you see those red little notifications on your phone. And I'm just saying on like the home screen, not even talking about the banners that show up. And so the best practice here is to just remove all the notifications on your phone. So if you go into your settings on your phone, whether it's Android or iPhone, and just turn off all the notifications on every single app that you have. Of course, on texting on your phone, maybe of course leave on the emergency setting that it might have for, let's say there's like a phone call or a text and whatnot. Or you can turn them off completely if you don't want anybody to call you at all. These are going to be really important because when you are opening up your phone for like important reasons such as actually doing work, you're not going to gravitate towards Instagram because you've got a notification that you see on there. And then once you see that notification, you open up Instagram, and now all of a sudden you're doom scrolling because after you replied to that message, you go to your newsfeed on Instagram before you close it, and now you're watching a 10-second reel. And now the whole doom scrolling starts, and you didn't even realize how you got to that point. You were only there to just check a message, but now it's 15 minutes in and you're already doom scrolling. Now this happens to pretty much everybody, right? We get sucked into that so easily. It's very hard to escape it, but once you identify you're doing that, that's how you remove yourself from the situation. So the first thing is to really remove those triggers that got you into that situation. So if you're able to remove the notifications, there's going to be a less high chance of you going to the app in the first place. And then you can start creating rules around that. So, okay, I'm only going to check my phone at the very end of the workday or at the very end of the night, and just saving it all for like that 30 minutes time span that you have just strictly for that day. You only can check your phone for 30 minutes at the end of the day, and that's when you go through all your notifications that might be on your phone. Because if you've got your notifications off on your phone, when you're looking at it, you won't see any of those red notifications to know whether you need to check that application or not. So then you can go through the whole splurge of seeing what you've missed out on in that one moment, instead of just seeing little bits throughout the day and continuously chipping away and tapping into that dopamine. Now, the next step as well, besides obviously removing the notifications, is accessibility. So this applies to pretty much everything that you're doing in terms of bad habits. So if you have easy accessibility to any kind of bad habit, it's going to be a lot harder to not do it, right? So for example, if you have video games on the computer where you do your work, you're going to be very much more likely to play video games because it's on your computer where you do your work. It's going to be a lot harder to do work when there's an easier solution in terms of a quick fix, which is playing games, right? So if you're removing things from this computer, like let's say the one I'm on right now, which I have removed, it's going to be really difficult for me to play games because I'd have to reinstall them, and then it would be like a 5-hour waiting time, whatever, for it to all download. So the further away you remove the distraction, the harder it's going to be, right? So for example, the way I quit smoking was that I would hide the cigarettes that I paid for in a place in my house that I would have to really struggle to get into, like in my closet, but it's in the very like edge of the closet, so it was going to be really difficult. I would have to get a ladder to go and grab that. And so because of that situation, it stopped me from doing it because I can't be bothered doing that, right? So if you make it really difficult for you to get to that distraction, that bad habit, it's a very low chance that you're going to do it. I'm not saying to remove the bad habit completely, because that's just unrealistic. We'll just find ways to readapt to it, and we'll find ways to just, let's say, reinstall that application or reinstall Tinder or whatever it is. But if you just make it really hard to get to it, it's going to be a lot easier to slowly move on. Now, another thing with bad habits is the association. So if you have an association with a habit, you might be coupling it with other habits. So for example, if you're somebody like me, where my big habit, which was smoking, was with drinking. So for example, whenever I'm drinking, I feel obliged to smoke at the same time because I've combined those two bad habits and they go really well together. So my thing is, if I'm drinking, I'm smoking, right? If I'm smoking, I'm drinking. So if I cut out drinking, then I won't be smoking, period. So now over time, as I cut out drinking, which was a lot easier to give up, in my opinion, because it's a lot less addictive to smoking, or at least in my opinion, because I cut out that thing, it then cut out the smoking completely. So I was able to go without smoking for like 3 months. And then from there, it just gets easier because you've now realized how easy it is to actually identify and remove that thing that was really hindering your progress. Now, as a music producer, I'm sure you're asking yourself, like, how does this actually impact me though? Like, how does this improve my production? Improving all these other external parts of your life is actually what makes you a better, more efficient human being. If you're efficient overall in terms of like your energy wise, your time, your structuring your day, that's going to give you more time and energy and bandwidth to actually get better at production. Because you've only got so many hours per day to write on music before you get fatigued. So you want to make sure that those hours are the best they can be. And these tips that I've said today as well are things that you can apply in your production as well. Like if you're writing a specific part of your track and you seem to deviate a lot towards worrying about the really micro decisions and tweaking a certain sound way too far where it doesn't need to because no one's even going to know it's there in the first place, those are kind of distractions we might go on rather than trying to finish up the track. Like for example, it's a lot easier to keep ruminating around a specific part of your track as opposed to just finishing the whole thing. And it's the same thing, which is a habit, is trying to start new tracks rather than just finishing the one you currently have, because you tend to deviate towards what's easier. It's a lot easier to start a new track rather than finish the one that you're 99% finished with, because we look for that quick dopamine fix that you would get from starting a new idea. This is the same kind of habit forming that we might have, and just identifying when we do these things and just trying to stay on track. So just to recap, figuring out what your triggers are. So for example, it might be like notifications or things that just give you that reminder that about the bad habit. There's the accessibility, so how close proximity you are with the bad habit. Like, is it in your room currently? Is that why you keep going towards it? Do you have a vape on standby? Is it like, do you have a vape like just sitting here right next to you and that's why you always go towards it? Like if you put these things further away, it's harder to reach it, right? And then third and finally, the association. So if you've already got other habits that overlap with that particular habit, that's going to make it really hard to give up that particular stronger one. So you try and find ways to remove the less impactful habit, so then you can get over it a lot easier. Now, I hope you guys found a lot of value out of this video. If you're looking for more kind of productivity related content, definitely check out the rest of the videos on our channel, as well as clicking that link in a description below. You can book in a discovery session with myself or one of the other student advisors, and you can learn a little bit more about what we got going on at Industry Set and see if that's a good fit for what you have and if you're a good fit for us. You might not be, but the only way to find out is to actually have a conversation about it. But that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video.